Chapter 5. The Psychological Programming of Empire. Religions. 6 layers of conditioning: guilt, fear, dependence, erasure, obedience, and the rewriting of history. Read by Ru of House of Keperu. Once Christianity became a state weapon, Rome engineered its doctrines to serve not the soul, but the psychology of control. Empire religion works by shaping how people think, how they fear, how they judge themselves, and how they interpret the world. It replaces inner authority with external authority, rewiring the mind to depend on priests, institutions, and imperial power for salvation. The first layer of programming was guilt, convincing people they are born flawed, sinful, and spiritually unworthy without the approval of the church. This guilt makes human beings easier to govern, because people who believe they are broken look for someone to fix them. The second layer was fear: hell, damnation, eternal punishment, and divine wrath. These ideas were foreign to African spirituality, which taught balance, cosmic justice, and the consequences of misalignment, not eternal torture. Fear paralyzes consciousness, making people obey commands even when those commands violate their own intuition. The third layer was dependence, telling people they cannot reach the divine through inner awareness or personal experience, but only through the church, the priests, the sacraments, and the institution. This cuts off spiritual sovereignty and replaces it with spiritual dependency. The fourth layer was identity erasure, teaching conquered populations to abandon their ancestral names, languages, gods, rituals, and cosmologies, replacing them with the symbols and narratives of Rome. This breaks the psychological continuity between a people and their ancestors, creating generations disconnected from their roots and therefore easier to control. The fifth layer was obedience framed as holiness, convincing people that unquestioning submission to authority is the highest form of devotion. This is the opposite of ancient African systems, which taught discernment, inner vision, and alignment with truth rather than obedience to hierarchy. Finally, the deepest layer of programming was the rewriting of history itself, erasing the African origins of spiritual knowledge, painting Europe as the birthplace of civilization, and teaching colonized people to see their own heritage as inferior. When a people lose their history, they lose their identity. When they lose their identity, they lose their power. And when they lose their power, they worship their oppressor as their savior. This is the psychology of empire religion: to take the creator, place it behind an institution, weaponize it through fear, monopolize it through doctrine, and use it to control entire populations for centuries. When a people lose their history, they lose their identity. When they lose their identity, they lose their power. Ashe.